Hello, everyone. Welcome to Unfiltered and Unapologetic, the space where we heal out loud, bring our culture into the conversation, and remember that softness is our strength. I'm your host, Caitlin Gil-Soto, born and raised in Lawrence, Massachusetts, always traveling between Bani and El Cibao, and proudly Dominicana. Today's episode is called Surrounded but Unseen When Presence Doesn't Mean Connection. Because sometimes you can be in a full house, voices everywhere, bachata playing, cousins running around, food on the stove, and still feel invisible. It's a silence that doesn't come from outside, but from within. A silence that whispers, nobody really sees me here. In Dominican homes, that silence became a way of surviving. Parents worked multiple jobs to keep the lights on. Abuelos carried memories of war, dictatorship, and migration that they rarely spoke about. And children learned early. Aguanta, no digas nada, todo está bien, or in other words, you need to endure, don't say anything, and everything will be okay. We were taught that sadness, anger, and even our hunger for connection didn't belong at the table. The truth is, many of us grew up surrounded by people and still carried a loneliness we couldn't explain. And when sadness, anxiety, or stress showed up, the response was more silence. Because in our culture, talking about mental health wasn't an option. Therapy was for the crazy people. Depression was seen as weakness. Anxiety was brushed off with, you just need to work harder. Get out of the house. Stop overthinking. This episode is about breaking that silence, about naming the loneliness we inherited, about pulling mental health out of the shadows of shame, and about choosing honesty and connection where silence once ruled. Because healing begins the moment we stop pretending everything is fine and allow ourselves to be fully seen. We grew up hearing things like, be grateful. You have food, a roof, a family, and yes, we were grateful. Gratitude was drilled into us, but gratitude didn't erase the emptiness. It didn't fill the quiet ache of being unseen. For many Dominican families, migration shaped everything. Parents left children behind for years, chasing opportunities in the US, Spain, or Puerto Rico. Abuelos stayed behind, raising grandkids while swallowing their own grief. And when families finally returned, love was there, but so were the gaps. Years of distance, words unsaid, feelings never explained. Even in houses full of people, there was often no space for emotional presence. Everyone was busy surviving. Parents working two jobs, kids helping raise younger siblings, aunts and uncles carrying their own battles in silence. Loneliness didn't come from being physically alone. It came from not being seen, not being understood. Think about that child at the dinner table, surrounded by cousins, the TV blasting, adults laughing at jokes that only half made sense, and yet inside the child still feels invisible. Nobody notices the tears swallowed, the questions stuck in the throat, the longing to just be held. That's what loneliness looks like when you grew up in a full house. It's not about space, it's about connection. And when connection is missing, presence feels empty. I have a journal prompt here for you guys. When in my life did I feel most invisible? Even when surrounded by people. And the affirmation for this question is, my need for connection is valid. Dominican homes are rarely ever quiet. There's always a soundtrack, bachata, merengue, or dembow, blasting on the radio, the TV yelling novela drama in the background, cousins running in and out, somebody cooking in the kitchen. On the surface, it felt alive. It felt full. But underneath all that noise, there was often no depth. Conversations stayed light, playful, or gossipy. We talked about food, about baseball, about que dirán or what will they say. But when it came to asking real questions, how are you really? What do you need? What's hurting you right now? The room fell silent. That's the paradox of loneliness in our culture. You can be surrounded by people, surrounded by laughter, even by love, and still feel starved for intimacy. The noise gave the illusion of closeness, but it also drowned out the truth. And here's the hard part. Many of us learned to settle for the noise, to mistake it for connection, to believe that laughter meant everything was okay, that food on the table meant we were whole, that survival meant we were thriving. But deep inside, we knew something was missing. Loneliness doesn't always live in silence. Sometimes it hides in the middle of the loudest room. And until we create space for honesty, no amount of noise will fill that emptiness. We saw it all around us. Tias who carried sadness that never lifted, tios who drowned their nights in drinking, parents who worked themselves numb, abuelos who never spoke about what they lost. The pain was there. You could feel it in the room, but nobody named it. We didn't call it depression. We didn't call it trauma. We didn't call it anxiety. We just called it la vida, or life. And because nobody named it, we grew up thinking suffering and silence was normal. That to be strong meant you kept moving no matter how heavy the weight was. That if you prayed hard enough, worked long enough, or stayed quiet enough, the pain would disappear on its own. But silence doesn't heal. Silence teaches you to hide. It teaches you to laugh when you want to cry, to stay busy when you need rest, to numb instead of feel. And while survival got us here, silence robbed us of language. Without words, we couldn't ask for help. Without honesty, we couldn't heal. This is the wound we carry. Generations who went unheard, passing down the lesson that emotions are dangerous and vulnerability is weakness. But the truth is, giving things a name doesn't make us weaker. It makes us free. Naming what our families couldn't is the first step towards breaking cycles they never had the chance to break. And then I have a journal prompt here for you guys. What's one struggle in my family that was never named for what it truly was? How has noise or distraction in my life covered up the deeper connections I've been craving? And the affirmations for this question is, I honor my truth by giving words to what others left in silence. I deserve conversations and relationships that go deeper than the surface. Silence doesn't just live in the mind. It settles into the body. Every time we swallowed our feelings, every time we held back tears, every time we said, I'm fine when we weren't, the body kept score. When we feel seen or unsafe, our bodies produce cortisol, the stress hormone. Cortisol isn't a bad thing. It helps keep us awake in the morning, focus at work, or react in an emergency. But when stress never stops, the body doesn't get a chance to rest. That's when cortisol stays high for too long, keeping us stuck in survival mode. Survival mode might look like this. You can't sleep even when you're exhausted. You wake up already tired. You get sick easily. Your stomach feels tight in knots. Your mood feels heavy or quick to snap. The body is whispering what the mouth never got to say. I can't carry this alone. Science shows us that long term loneliness is as harmful as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That's how serious it is when the heart craves connection but only finds silence. And in Dominican culture, we were taught to push through no matter what. Aguanta, no te quejes, or endure and don't complain. Just keep moving. We learn to numb with food, to push our bodies beyond exhaustion, to treat rest like laziness. But the truth is, rest, movement, and nourishment aren't luxuries. They're healing. Healing doesn't have to be complicated. Dancing merengue in the sala, stretching before bed, cooking mango with love, or sitting quietly with your journal. These are ways of telling your body that you're safe now and you can let go. I have another journal prompt here for you guys. Where in my body do I feel stressed the most? And what helps me release it? And the affirmation for this question is, my body deserves care, rest, and nourishment. Healing is not something we're meant to do alone. Loneliness convinces us that we have to carry it all by ourselves. Shame tells us not to speak, not to bother anyone, not to let people see the cracks. But healing whispers a different truth. We were never meant to do life in silence. Breaking that silence can look simple, but it's powerful. It's calling a cousin and choosing honesty over small talk. It's saying, I need help even when the words feel heavy. It's making space at the dinner table for conversations that go deeper than gossip. It's sitting in therapy, journaling in your notebook, or praying out loud what your heart has been holding in. Our grandparents and great-grandparents didn't always have that chance. For them, silence was survival. Silence kept the family together, kept appearances intact, kept danger away, but the silence that once protected them became the wall that disconnected us. And now we have the chance to turn that silence into something new. A language of honesty, tenderness, and healing. Because loneliness may have been inherited, but connection can be too. Every honest word, every tear shed, every boundary set becomes a seed of freedom planted for the generations that follow. And if you don't know where to begin, start with the prayer. Sometimes the first honest conversation isn't with family, it's with God. I have a journal prompt here for you guys. Where in my life can I create more honesty and connection? And the affirmation for this question is, my voice creates freedom for me and for those who come after me. When we talk about silence in Dominican families, it's not just about personality or preference. It's about survival. Our grandparents and great-grandparents lived through dictatorship, poverty, and migration. Under Trujillo, speaking the truth could cost you your life. In the years that followed, migration split families apart, forcing parents to leave their children for the hope of something better. Silence wasn't weakness, it was protection. That silence got passed down. Parents who didn't grow up hearing, I'm proud of you, or how are you really, didn't always know how to say those words to us. Grandparents who lost so much never spoke about their grief because they didn't have the luxury to stop and feel. Instead, they taught us how to endure. They taught us that survival meant swallowing what hurt. And maybe in their time it worked. But survival has a cost. The same silence that once kept them safe became the wall that separated us, that left our generation emotionally starved. hungry for words, tenderness, and depth that never came. This is where healing gets complicated, honoring the fact that their silence wasn't personal, it was historical. And at the same time, realizing that we have the power to choose differently. We don't have to repeat survival patterns in a world where survival is no longer the only option. I have a journal prompt here for you guys. What silences did my family inherit from history, and how am I being called to break them? And the affirmation for this question is I honor where my family came from, and I choose healing where they only had survival. Loneliness has a way of making us feel forgotten, even when we know God is with us. Silence in our homes, in our families, in our culture can make it hard to believe we're truly seen. But here's the truth: God has never been absent from our loneliness. He has been sitting in it with us, waiting for us to notice that His presence never left. Think back to the moments when you felt invisible: at the family table, in your own room at night, in the middle of a fight no one ever talked about again. You weren't as alone as you thought. God was there, holding parts of you that felt too heavy to carry. Scripture reminds us that God is close to the brokenhearted. That means He doesn't wait until we're healed to draw near. He meets us in the middle of our sadness, our confusion, our isolation, the places where our families couldn't give us words. God gives us presence. Where culture gave us silence, He gives us comfort. And maybe that's where healing begins, in realizing that while people may not have had the tools to see us, God always has. His presence fills the spaces where human connection failed us. And when we lean into that truth, we find the courage to open our mouths and tell the truth, to build the kind of connections He always intended for us. I have a journal prompt here for you guys. Where have I felt the most unseen, and how can I invite God into that memory? And the affirmation for this question is I am never truly alone. God sees me, hears me, and holds me. Reflection is powerful, but healing needs movement. Breaking cycles doesn't just happen in the mind. It happens in the small daily choices we make to live differently than we inherited. Sometimes the first step is as simple as journaling, putting words on paper that you never had the chance to say out loud, writing the questions you were told not to ask, and giving yourself permission to answer them honestly. Sometimes it looks like therapy, walking into a room where you don't have to filter your truth for que dirán, a space where your sadness, your anger, your story is met with compassion, not silence. It can also look like moving your body. Science tells us stress gets stuck in the muscles, in the gut, in the nervous system. Dancing merengue in your living room, stretching before bed, taking a walk in fresh air. These aren't small things. There are ways of telling your body you're safe now. You can let go. And sometimes action looks like conversation. Choosing honesty with a trusted friend or family member. Breaking the cycle at the dinner table by asking, how are you really? And being willing to answer the same. Healing doesn't have to be dramatic. It's the small acts of courage repeated over time that turn silence into truth, fear into connection, survival into freedom. I have a journal prompt here for you guys. What is one small action I can take this week to break silence in my own life? And the affirmation for this question is my healing doesn't have to be perfect. Every small step counts. Healing is not meant to be a solo journey. Loneliness convinced us we had to carry it all by ourselves. Shame told us to stay quiet, but the truth is, healing multiplies when it's shared. Breaking silence isn't only about writing in your journal or speaking to a therapist, though those are powerful steps. It's also about community. It's about sitting with your cousin and choosing honesty instead of small talk. It's about asking your sibling how they really feel and being willing to listen past the surface. It's about letting your children see your tears so they know emotions are not dangerous. They're human. Our parents and grandparents didn't always have this freedom. For them, silence was survival. They did what they could with the tools they had. But we have the chance to turn that silence into something else: truth, tenderness, and connection. And here's the most beautiful part: every time we choose honesty, it doesn't just set us free, it plants a seed for the next generation. Every conversation, every boundary, every tear released becomes an inheritance of freedom for those who come after us. Loneliness may have been passed down, but so can connection. Silence may have been the language of our past, but healing can be the language of our future. And if you're unsure of where to begin with prayer. Sometimes the first honest conversations aren't with our family, it's with God. And from there, the courage to speak with others will grow. I have the last journal prompt here for you guys. Where in my life can I create more honesty and connection with others? And the affirmation for this question is: my voice creates freedom for me and for those who come after me. As we close today's episode, I want to invite you to pause with me. We've talked about loneliness, silence, and the weight of what was never said. But we've also named healing, connection, and the courage to break cycles. With that said, we are going into a prayer. So put your hand on your chest and let's inhale and exhale. My God, today I bring you the silence I've been carrying, the questions I never asked, the words I never said, the loneliness I learned to hide. I release the weight of generational silence, the kind that kept my family safe but kept my heart distant. Help me turn that silence into something new, into truth, into tenderness, into connection. Remind me that I am never alone, even in moments when I feel unseen. That your presence has always been with me, at the dinner table, in the quietness of my room, in the middle of my tears. Give me the courage to speak where my family could not, to tell the truth, to create safe spaces, to build relationships that heal instead of hide. Let every small step I take toward honesty ripple into my family, my community, and the generations to come. May my voice carry freedom, may softness carry strength, and may my healing carry forward the work my ancestors could not finish. Today, we named a truth many of us have carried quietly: that you can be surrounded by people and still feel unseen. We talked about loneliness in a full house, noise without depth, the pain our families never called by its name, and how the body remembers what silence tried to bury. We honored the generations before us who chose silence to survive, and we recognized that we have the chance to choose differently, to turn that silence into honesty, into tenderness, into healing. We remembered that even in loneliness, God has never left us, and we explored small practical ways to move from silence into action with journaling, therapy, movement, and honest conversations. Loneliness may have been inherited, but so can connection. Silence may have been the language of the past, but healing can be the language of our future. Thank you so much for tuning in to Unfiltered and Unapologetic. If this episode spoke to you, I'd love for you to leave a review. It helps the show reach more people who need this message. You can also support the podcast by grabbing one of my blank journals on Amazon for your own reflection journey, or by making a monthly contribution through Buzzsprout to help keep this work going. And don't forget to connect with me on Instagram at Caitlin La Jefa and at Unfilled and Unapologetic Pod, where I share more reflections, prompts, and behind the scenes of the podcast. Until next time, remember, your voice matters, your softness is strength, and your healing is sacred. Thanks for healing out loud with me.